Hello everyone and welcome to Fear and Hunger Friday! Where we will be playing a character called Osaa, the Yellow Mage. Contrary to other priests' belief, Yellow Mages don't dedicate their lives to worship. Yellow Mages use otherworldly powers only to their own benefit and further their own agenda. So if you don't want to see me reading a bunch, you can skip ahead a bit to when I'm on the train and walking. Because there will be a lot of reading. Poor reading, since Miro makes a lot of mistakes when writing. Miro being the creator of this game. Skip the character. No, give me full text adventure. What? No, wait, what? What's this? Hold up. I mean, surely you're taking the full text adventure, right? Abridged is shorter. The soothing sound of the rail tracks. You are not used to such peaceful and tranquil atmosphere. You can't help but let your mind wander. You reminisce what has led you to this point in life. You were born and raised in the raging heart of Abyssinia, the continent with a long history embedded with chaos and warring factions. Those fools, the people around you, waged war over ancient disputes and grudges started by long-gone ancestors. But that is how it had always been. The people of Abyssinia held ancestors and their spirits on a godlike pedestal. But it's not like it was any better in the north, in the continent of Europa. Those fools worshipped ancient deities that none of them have ever seen with their own eyes. And they certainly had their own disputes as well. A great war after another. Worse, their disputes didn't stay within their borders. They dragged everyone into their mess. They had set their eyes on Abyssinia now because of its strategic position in securing an access to oil and other raw materials from the east. It was only a matter of time before their troops would march on your land. You were not going to die because some faceless puppeteers chose to focus their magnifying glass on your home country this time. Despite your young age, you decided to leave. Your siblings and mother would mourn your departure. They wanted you to have something to remember them by. Soulstone or Chak-Chak? You took the Chak-Chak with you. You consider yourself successfully dead inside, not swayed by emotions, but it took a lot of effort to convince yourself that you wouldn't miss your family. You still obviously had weaknesses to weed out. You headed to the City of the Sun, Amon, to educate yourself on spiritualism and religion. You were no slough physically, but you always considered your intellect your true forte. And just like that, you were accepted as an apprentice after some preliminary tests. At the same time, news about the Great War closing Abyssinian borders were all they could talk on the radio. Amon was far from the borders, and it would probably remain safe for a good while, even after a war broke out. You figured you'd still have plenty of time to learn at the temple and leave the country, before it was too late. At the Temple of Amon, you were given a choice to learn various different schools of spiritualism. Don't worship in the Eastern Sanctuary. You learned pyromancy trick. Ooh. You were talented and praised for your quick learning at the temple, but that came as no surprise to you. You knew you were smarter than most of those old geezers. They only possessed knowledge you wanted. Once you had that, they served no purpose to you. More time you spent at the temple, more pathetic priests of Amon started to look in your eyes. Religion in general started to look dubious too, after examining how the world functioned. Most religious doctrines were modeled to accommodate the current ruling class. Religion was used as a mere tool to control masses, more than anything else dedicating your life to worship would equal dedicating your life to kings and queens of the time. You had left your home because you didn't want to die fighting someone else's war, so why would you waste your life serving someone else in turn? Around this time you found an old scroll from one of the many Amon libraries. The scroll mentioned an old sect magical practitioners originating from the Eastern Sanctuaries whose worldview seemed more appealing to you. Yellow mages differed from your typical priests. Instead of dedicating their lives to worship, gods existed for them. Their force was to be harnessed to further one's own personal growth and agenda. Instead of finding order from the commandments laid out by the older gods, Yellow Mages reveled in chaos. Chaos was a natural state of the world, would return to in time and time again, so why even try and force anything else? You quit the Temple of Amon and decided to head east in pursuit of these Yellow Mages. You traveled beyond your home continent, ultimately finding yourself at the narrow streets of Eastern Sanctuaries. You got acquainted with local temples. Even they had adopted the worship of Almer as their main religion. Eastern sanctuaries were no better than the temple of Ammon in that regard. If anything, religion was even more prevalent there, and dictated the way people were to live and die. You were looked down upon by the scholars and religious leaders of the area because of your very public opinions. That didn't bother you. You knew better. In time, your conviction convinced the facets you wanted. You were approached by a group of traveling mages who wore colorful attires. The yellow mages that were still around in this day and age were reduced to small separate groups wandering around the world to study all fields of the otherworldly. The group saw the potential in you and offered a place among them. You liked what you heard and decided to join the wandering group. What did you specialize in? Advanced magics. Hurting. Damn, this guy's crazy. Your path of learning and self-growth knew no end. Your travels brought you to a small border town in Eastern Sanctuaries. There you met a curious person, Hadil Azif, a self-proclaimed wizard from the Far East. Despite his pretentious appearance, his family name Azif was well known and even somewhat feared in certain occult circles, which gave his claims at least some credibility. He was gathering a group of adventurers to accompany him on a perilous quest. He had inherited a map from his late grandfather that was supposed to lead him to the infamous Dungeons of Fear and Hunger itself. The place used to be a noteworthy location of pilgrimage for many aspiring mages and priests in the distant past. The yellow mages you had spent time with previously told ominous tales about the dungeons as well. Initially you dismissed Azif's talks only to be haunted by the most brutal nightmares on the following night. Something was calling for you. You had to witness the place for yourself. You joined the motley crew of adventurers Azif had managed to put together and traveled through the war-torn Europa. Most of the crew quit halfway through to London because of how difficult it was to cross borders during those chaotic times. The closer to destination you got, more feverish your dreams became. The remaining members of your ragtag fellowship were visibly sick from stress and otherworldly pressures that had befallen on you the moment you set foot on your quest. What the? The breaking point was the day you were to finally arrive at the dungeons. A heavy fog drowned your camp and made navigation impossible. Using compass did no good as the thing was just spinning circles wildly. Distant growls and howls created unrest. Not that there was any need for that, as superstition and constant misfortune had already convinced your fellow travelers that this trip was cursed from the start. Your companions panicked and scattered the mist, as if himself had been sick from constant nightmares for half the trip already. You left him curled up in a fetal position in his tent and ventured forward on your own. After walking for a while, you started to make out, why did it go darker? Mouthed something in thick white veil. The mist revealed structures of some kind. You got a set of old rooms where they looked more like a measly pile of rubble now. If it wasn't for the dreadful aura emanating from the deep within, you couldn't tell where there was anything remarkable about this place whatsoever. Near the main entrance arc, there was a makeshift archaeological site with tents and digging equipment. The site looked abandoned. On the other side, there was a side entrance to the dungeon with stairs leading down the darkness below. Head to the side entrance. Cautious, you walked down the slippery stairs on to find a cave-in. The hallway had totally collapsed, and there seemed to be no way around it. Buried under the rubble, there was an old skeleton in a medieval leather armor crushed under a ton of rocks. You didn't want to suffer the same fate with the skeleton, so you returned back. Archaeological equipment looks on the other side. Examine the tents. The archaeological site seemed relatively new, maybe a couple of years old at tops. There were no signs of people. Whoever had set it up had long abandoned this place too. All documents and reports were written in Bremen, so you couldn't tell what exactly these people were looking for. This might have just been regular archaeological excursion that stumbled into their certain doom unknowingly. If these truly were the dungeons of fear and hunger, then even in their current state, they would surely swallow unprepared tourists whole. Near the main entrance arc, there was a makeshift archaeological site with tents and digging equipment. Head to the main entrance. The moment you stepped inside the dungeon walls, you felt immense otherworldly pressure. You understood that the place would drain any normal person to the brink of madness and starvation in a matter of mere hours. You had to be efficient about this. Even if the day was still bright, the darkness seemed to suffocate all light and you could barely see anything ahead of you. You lit up a torch. You stood at the vestibule of the dungeons. What? So To your left, you saw a doorway leading to what seemed like a kitchen. There was a small room with old wooden furniture in front of you, and your right, there was a closed door. Check out the room front. The room had an old wooden desk in front of a partly rotted and that hung. The flag was of old Rondon. The opposite wall had half-empty bookshelves facing towards you. Behind a small pile of rubble, you saw a wooden chest covered in cobwebs and dust. Check the test. Upon close inspection, you noticed that the chest lock was busted. Opening the chest confirmed your suspicions. The place had been looted long before you entered these ruins. Suddenly, a loud bang and screeching from the entrance hall. Adrenaline was rushing through you as you ran back to see just what was causing noise. Closed door was jolting from its hinges. Something big was trying to force its way through the door. Whatever was it created inhuman gutturals between swings at door. Hide in the kitchen. You quickly waltzed inside the kitchen and pressed against a corner where you thought you could stay hidden while this still seeing what you were up against. The door crashed open, so a dark silhouette of a gigantic malformed being pushed from the open doorway. The creature made gurgling noises as it slowly wandered to the other room. You used his chance to sneak past the thing to the dark corridor where it first came from. The creature had clearly gotten used to the darkness as it sensed you the moment you got out from your hiding spot. You charged unknown darkness without second thought. You ran as fast as you could, creating distance to the malformed beast with each step. You couldn't see much in the darkness, but your door frame had light shining through its cracks caught your attention. You tackled the door open and stumbled to an overgrown courtyard. Quickly glancing back at the dark corridor, you noticed that the beast was nowhere to be seen. You figured that the last rays of the setting sun still kept it at bay. You took a breath and slowly walked across the yard. The grass had taken a sickly yellowish color, and the setting sun created ominous shadows as its rays hit the lone gallows standing at the center of the enclosure. As you managed to focus your thoughts, you realized that there was an additional voice echoing in your head. Something or someone was calling you from the depths of the Forsaken Fortress. There was something very curious about this echo. You needed to find the source, not like you had a choice, but to delve deeper as the sun was rapidly setting down, stripping you from the last barrier that kept murderous beasts hiding you from the dark shadows. The courtyard led to another door to the darkness. You pushed forward. You were at the foyer of the dungeons. The hall was large. To your left was the lavatory, to your right there was a long corridor leading to a total darkness, and before you rose a large stairway up. We don't want to go up, so we go right. Your torch slowly pushed away the darkness as you advanced towards the unknown. The further you got, the stronger the echo inside your head became. You couldn't make out words clearly, but this was definitely the right direction. A larger room opened up behind a set of rusty iron bars. Your torch revealed the human-like figures that stood still just beyond the radius of the light. Upon close inspection, you noticed that these figures were medieval Iron Maidens, human-shaped torture devices that had been in practical use, judging from the old stains that had formed on the seeping blood of their victims. The room had numerous other torture devices as well. Most of them would probably be inoperative in this day and age. Among them, you saw an old reinforced chest, and at the back of the room, you saw a corridor leading to the cells. Check the chest. The chest looked old. It might as well have been medieval for all you knew. As you tried opening it, you realized the lock was still fully functioning. You couldn't open it with proper key. You felt a cold draft run across the chamber. The draft seemed to be guiding you towards the dark corridor. Check the dark corridor. The corridor that opened up was a long one with multiple cell doors covering each side. At the end there were large bars leading off a staircase. Only a rusty old lock stood in your way towards the deeper darkness. Check the gates. Despite being ancient, the lock seems surprisingly durable. You figure that you need a key, something similar to Pathway Down. Check the cell doors. All the cells were locked. Your torch barely lit any of the cells, there were no telling what was inside them. Turn to the torch chamber. You wondered if the room had seen any use since the heyday. The chest looked old. Return to the foyer. You decided to return to the foyer. While walking there, you carefully tried to listen for another possible residence of these dungeons. You were at the foyer of the dungeons. The hall was large. To your left was a lavatory. To your right there was a long corridor leading to darkness. The wide stairway led to an old Altmarian sacrificial altar with a skeleton crucified to it. Next to the altar there was a side path leading deeper inside the fortress. Examine the altar. The altar was typical ritual crucifix to worship Almar. ascended one. A sacrifice would be put on the cross as her blood would slowly be drained for days to come. Traditionally, such rituals were used for protection. Almer would look after the immediate surroundings for as long as the blood was running down the cross. The last sacrifice this cross saw must have been this skeleton. There was no blood dripping from the cross anymore, so no protection from Almer either. The path was a narrow corridor crudely made from misshapen bricks and stones. It looked like the floor had collapsed at certain points, but you were able to hop over the trench with ease. A large room opened up before you. The room stood with its own finer decor. Spiral floors, tilling, and its many bookcases covering the walls. The southern corner of the room had a small doorway shrouded in darkness. The north end corner was more dilapidated, with its caved-in ceilings and all. Check the bookshelves. Most of the books that were still left had been growing mold for hundreds of years. Oh, Grogroth. The manuscripts all seemed to be part of a bigger compilation, and you would have loved for all of them with you. You had a job to do and couldn't burden yourself with too much extra luggage. The large room opened up before you. The room stood with its finer decor. Check the doorway. It also lit up a small room and revealed a wooden desk with the drawers, a carpet that was from the Eastern Sanctuaries, judging by its pattern. Blah 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 blah. The desk was trashed. Someone must have searched the desk. Most of the valuables had been looted long time ago already. Opening drawers revealed only... force it open. You kicked the drawer a couple of times, managing to force it open. Lucky coin rolled out from the drawer. Faint whining moaning could be heard from the partly eaten archaeologist. The chorus was trying to get on his feet. As he stumbled, a group of keys fell from his lap. You pick up the prison keys. Slowly, one step. Ignore it. Cast attack with your staff. Oh, shit. Shit. Before managing to attack, you tripped on a pile of rubble. As you lifted your torch to see the ghoul already charged towards you with surprising ferocity, you managed to push the creature back just barely and escaped with a minor injury. Yet the ghoul kept on following you, cautiously hopped over the collapsed floor to the corridor leading to the library. The creature was not as agile, and instead face-planted the ghoul as it tripped in rubble. The ghoul was waist deep in the trench, unable to climb back up. Desperately, he tried reaching out for you with his blood-soaked hands. The whines and growls turned into agitated shrieks as it furiously tried to snatch you. It looked like the creature was stuck. You figured you'd best just leave this area for now and explore elsewhere. Check out the large dark corridor. We've seen this upon closer inspection. Check the... Oh no, I should check the chest, shouldn't I? Return to the torture chamber. Sorry, I just want to check the chest now that I have... Oh, did I die? What the f***? I'm sorry? Okay, what? Okay, we're doing that again. We're doing that again. So I'm just gonna skip ahead and I'll cut back to when I'm at the foyer. Okay, so I got 2 bear traps from a small key that I use on the chest. For the cold draft to run across the chamber. The draft seemed to be guiding you towards the dark corridor at the end of the room. Check the dark corridor. Loud creaking groans would be heard behind you. Something big had just entered the foyer. You figured it must have been the malformed archaeologist from before. The sun must have set, which made it possible for the creature to advance through the courtyard. The creature must have had your scent as its footsteps closed in on you at a rapid pace. You act fast. The corridor that opened up was a long one, with multiple cells, doors covering each side. At the end there were large bars sealing off a staircase. Only a rusty old lock could stop. Check the gates. You heard the creature trash the nearby torch chamber. He was right on your heels. You couldn't see him in the darkness, but you could sense his intense hatred homing in on you. The gate was locked with a reinforced lock. You tried to remain cool as you hoped for the prison keys to work. The beast was already charging towards you as you opened the gate and slipped right inside only seconds before the malformed monster smashed against the bars. Violently, the creature tried to reach for you while making low grunt noises from its swollen throat. The bars and the gate seemed to hold the beast for now, but you didn't want to stay and find out whether the thing could eventually break in. Instead, you took the stairs deeper into the darkness. The thought crossed your mind. If darkness had twisted those poor sods to become mindless beasts, would the same fate await for you if you stayed in the dungeons for long enough? The stairs became sticky from old gore and blood the deeper you got. The air was stale and had rotten smell to it. The voice inside your head got louder. You still couldn't make sense of any words, but it was definitely calling for you. Deeper. You had to get deeper, that much was clear. You entered a huge chamber full of partly buried skeletons and rotting corpses laying about. The ground had a thick layer of dried blood and filth which had accrued around the chamber walls over the years. Accrued, I'll have to check that word out. I don't know what that means. Each step you took echoed to dizzying heights. You couldn't see the chamber ceiling. The walls just rose up forever to the darkness. There were 2 staircases in the chamber. One led to the ground level you had just escaped, while the other one led to lower levels. In the middle of the chamber there was a rather new-looking wooden contraption. Examine the pile of bodies. Most of the bodies had been decaying and decaying for hundreds of years. Some bodies looked fresher than the others, while some were reduced to bare skeletons. The ludicrous amount of corpses did raise questions about the purpose of this chamber, but there was no one around to answer those questions anymore, so you just took everything at face value. Stairs down. The stairs leading down were sticky with the grime like everything else in that chamber. A wood draft moved along the chasm that awaited in the bottom. A giant underground ravine opened up before you. Even your torch couldn't properly light up the area. There were iron grid platforms suspended above seemingly bottomless chasms. The platforms were mounted on cavern walls and linked together with a shaky-looking bridge. The side you were on had a few individual prison cells in a row. What waited on the other side of the bridge was shrouded in darkness. You walked up the stairs cautiously. I wanted to check the wooden contraption. You didn't notice a gaping hole at the center of the chamber until you got closer and your torch lit up the surroundings. The wooden contraption had been built around as a freight elevator of some sort, lifting and lowering items people necessary. Stained blood, judging by some of the equipment around the elevator, must have used. Yeah, you have contraption yourself if you had some rope with you. Okay, let's go down then. Check the prison cells. You tried opening the cells, but all of them appeared locked, so some locks just even function properly anymore. There appeared to be no way inside the bars. A giant ravine. Walk over the bar. You cautiously walked up to the bridge. Just putting some weight on the thing caused a couple of nuts and bolts fall from the end of steps. You braved across. The bridge felt like it was about to collapse at any moment, but somehow it remained together. The other side of the ravine was more or less identical to the one where you just came. There were 3 cells in a row. At the end of the platform there was a corridor leading away from the ravine back to the solid ground. Examine the ravine. You realize something now that you looked at the ravine from the other side. Next to the man-made platform in the dark, there were huge statues carved on the cavern walls where the brick walls of the prison area ended. The statues were figures from olden times, clad in armor, only their appearance wasn't that of humans. No, these figures appeared more reptilian. The appearance of the conditions of the statues suggested that they were a lot older and anything that had been built around them over the years. They were probably there even before the whole fortress existed in the first place. There were 3 cells in a row at the end of the platform. No, the cells were locked. One caught your eye particularly. There was a huge naked creature inside. The creature looked human, but the person must have been at least 2.5 meters tall, if not more. The upper body of the thing was shrouded in darkness. For a moment you thought the creature was still breathing, but you figured it must have been the flickering torch, creating illusion, surely. You walked away quietly and impossible. There were 3 in a row. Go to the corridor then. The corridor took you to a small intersection. To your left there was a doorway, a small room, and to your right the corridor continued deeper and deeper. Check out the small room. The room looked like it had once belonged to an army officer. There were numerous weapon racks in the room positioned next to an empty shelf. At the back of the room there was a wooden desk with an impressive looking leather recliner behind it. Behind the desk you noticed a small cast iron chest that seemed like a rusty lever. Check the weapon racks. A few swords and spears, one of the swords. Ooh. Officer sword. Oh, the room looked like it once belonged to behind the desk. Had been ransacked long time ago. You examined the bottom of the desk, hidden trapdoor. A pipe and a pouch full of tobacco fell out from... Oh, nice. That's really good for a spellcaster. A loud creak echoed from the ravine. The dungeons were dead silent apart from the small ruckus caused by you going through the room. Whoever still lived in the darkness would hear you loud and clear. So I have to leave now. Check the lever. It looked like a mechanical lever used to control something. You tried pulling it, but it was stuck. Didn't budge. It was a curious little thing, but its purpose would remain a mystery to you. You heard an ear-piercing screech. It sounded like a cell door was just forced open. Steady scraping. Hide behind the wooden desk. You hid behind the desk and tried to get a decent vantage point as scraping noises grew louder and louder. A huge humanoid creature entered the room. The thing was naked, revealing its abnormally muscular and scarred physique. His left arm was missing, replaced with what looked like a long pole or rods full of thorns and other sharp. The most striking feature in this one was its head. The thing had a head of a crow, and it was not just a mask. The feathers were growing down its neck too. The empty glaring eyes seemed to stare right through you from the darkness of the doorway. The crow gave you a loud caw and mixed with a deep resonating growl of anguish. Man, that was all warning you got as it charged straight at you. The creature swung fiercely at you. Cast hurting on it. You didn't have time to even start chanting the spell as come on. The creature knew perfectly well how to use its dreadful weapon. You were surprised by the mercy shown as the crow finished you quickly with its... come on! Jesus Christ. Holy shit, why is it so hard? It's not gonna be much of a video, this one. I'm sorry, guys. I think I'm just going to try to complete the Osaa text adventure before we, instead of actually playing the game, because I don't think you noticed this, but I am actually sick, and well, as you say, I don't have the time to have the strength to be doing this because I feel like I'm dying. I have a high fever, tired, my body hurts. So yeah, we're just gonna try to be quick here. Deeper. Your torch pushed away the darkness, the dancing light flickered. You noticed a rope tied on the platform. On the other end of the rope you saw a corpse belonging to the archaeological expedition. This person had apparently hanged himself. The horrors of the dungeons must have been too much for him. Lift up the corpse. You pulled the rope. You were right in your assessment. The person had modern clothing that looked like that of a stereotypical Western archaeologist. There was nothing of value. You did pick up the rope, though. The grid iron bridge, there was nothing apart, so head back. Your footsteps were the only thing echoing in the dark forest and a cushion of water droplets. Head back to the dark corridor. George pushed away the darkness, dancing light flickered on the stone skeleton chained to the wall. The corridor circled back in a great chasm. Grid iron bridge connecting the two sides had completely collapsed on this end of the ravine. There was nothing there apart from the corpse you had pulled up. What? Send the corpse. Head back, I guess. Go to the small door. Go to the small door, I guess. There was standing a grid iron platform that was spanned above the dark ravine. So then a roaster would back up where you actually came from. I returned to the upper floor chamber, I guess. As you walked back, you once again heard the echo inside your head. This time you could almost understand some words. Deeper, you must delve deeper. The great path must have been somewhere at the bloody chamber. There were two staircases in the chamber. One led to the ground level and examined the contraption. You didn't notice the gaping hole at the center of the chamber until you got closer and your torch lit up the surroundings. The wooden contraption, blah blah blah, so just be elevator of some kind. Use rope. You tied the rope tightly to the wooden beams and threw the loose end to the pit. A cold draft could be felt coming from the depths below. You headed down. You climbed down the claustrophobic bloody pit. The pit opened up and the area revealed itself was even more open than the ravine upstairs. It was a huge cavern beneath the fortress ruins. The rope ended up on top of a crashed wreckage. An iron cage had crashed on the rocky ground from the pit you came from. A closer inspection suggested it was an elevator of some kind. Needless to say, it wasn't functional anymore. You stood on solid ground next to the wreckage. The cavern was huge. Your torchlight left you standing in the torchlight. Okay. Check the campsite. You walked up to the tent and noticed there were no signs of life there. The archaeological crew was gone. The campsite had a couple of tents side by side, open crates of full digging equipment, makeshift, blah blah blah. Go to the digging site. The digging site was bigger than it looked. Go down to the wooden platform. You descended down to the dark depths. The echo inside your head returned once again. Misguided soul, can't you hear my call? The words were clear time. Good, finally. The voices came more clearer. The archaeological crew had been digging deep and revealed something that should have stayed hidden. Ancient structures could clearly be seen protruding from the rocky surface. The structures looked almost like remains of a city from another time. The wooden platforms took you straight to them, and a ladder was set to lead you inside what looked like a temple of some other kind of place of worship. You climbed in. One's temple was dilapidated by the time, but you could still spot some murals on the wall that depicted rituals and gods not known to this day and age. Even if you only witnessed glimpses of something larger, the scale of the building already impressed you. It was unlike anything you had ever seen. Eastern Sanctuaries, the city of Ammon, Abyssinia, they all paled in comparison. The voice inside your head was getting loud. This way, this way, this way, this way. You dug the rubble with your bare hands. You turned over wooden structures and pushed away a stone pillar. There it was, the source of the voice. A burnt and withered head. A severed head to be more precise. The head had deep lines running across it. In the place of its eyes were dark and empty sockets. The only hair on the head was the sparse mustache under its big nose. I wasn't expecting a worm like you weaseling its way deep to the dungeons, but I'll take what I can get. All earthworms do, after all, is dig. Your garments, Maybe you do have more than a camel's spunk in place of your brains. You're a yellow mage, are you not? You confirmed the suspicions of this beheaded oddity. Figures. That is why a measly man like yourself could hear my call. Very well. Kneel before me, for I am your master, Nashra, the doom and terror of the modern man. That name, Nashra. That was a name you were not expecting to hear. It was a name even the yellow mages only talked in the darkest hours of the night. Nashra, the harbinger of the burning crusade. Nashra, the bringer of torment. Nashra, the doom and terror of the modern man. The great wizard from the Eastern Sanctuaries who went by many names. He indeed was your master. For this beheaded wizard was the one who gave birth to yellow mages and their ideology. Only that had happened over thousands of years earlier. There were no records of Nashra for at least 500 years. You are a lucky bastard, lucky indeed. There is a man I want skinned alive. After that I want to rip off their spines, those maggots. They will slump before me, limp and feeble. Your master seemed to be surprisingly up to date with the twists and turns the world had taken since his absence. He had a mission for you. As Yellow Mage, you were supposed to follow your own ambitions and greed, but there was a lot you could learn from this death-defying wizard that could further your knowledge on dark matters greatly. You decided to play along. You were sure that this terror of the modern man was perfectly aware of your reasoning too. That was the typical relationship between a master Yellow Mage and their apprentice, after all. You were to travel to a small country in the Eastern Europa with the beheaded wizard to a town called Priheville. Your master promised events of cosmic proportions. The stars were aligned for something big to happen, something that would turn the tides of the world for good. The left head left you out details from his story on purpose, but that did little to bother you. You had just jumped to the depths end of the otherworldly world. You couldn't have asked for more. With this little information about the task at hand, how did you prepare for the trip? Magical goods. Condensed lavender. Every night, nightmares, horrors, wait, whatever the prize opportunity was too interesting. Okay. I'm sorry guys, but I think that's it for this video. Skip the intro. Because, as I said, this is a bit much for me right now. I am, as I said, sick. But, the train seems to have stopped. You hear a voice echoing from the beheaded wizard. I trust you got the gist of things. Let us proceed. We have work to do. Something seems off. This is not the moon god's usual modus operandi. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Next week, we won't be playing Osaa, sadly. That will be a long time from now when we play Osaa next time. But I hope you have a great weekend, guys, and see you next time. I'm so sorry that was just a text adventure, but it was so annoying. So much time went to this. So yeah, I hope you understand, and if you're mad, leave a comment below, and do leave comments on things you want me to try in the game next episode. I would appreciate it. Anyway, I'm feverish. I need ice. I'm dying. I literally feel like I'm dying. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed, and have a great weekend. Ciao!